Pennsylvania Inside Out Issues on WPSU TV. Here's tonight's host, David Price.
Good evening. Welcome to Pennsylvania Inside Out Issues. Our topic tonight is one that evokes intense agreement and provokes equally intense disagreement. Its interpretations give Americans the right to worship as they choose or not, and to act in ways that may deeply offend those who choose to worship or not. It gives journalists the right to investigate and criticize their government, ostensibly without reprisal. It gives us the right to gather peacefully, the right to petition, the right to freedom of speech. But none of those privileges is without restrictions, and it is at that juncture where we find ourselves tonight as we discuss the First Amendment. And joining us from the Pennsylvania Center for the First Amendment, Dr. Robert Richards. Bob, thank you very much for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I
guess I should clarify, freedom of speech really has evolved into freedom of expression. Speech is sort of a narrow term. State of the Union for the First Amendment.
Well, I guess the president always starts the State of the Union by saying the State of the Union is strong. every State of the Union address, the State of the Union is strong. And I think it is strong for the First Amendment as well. But we do have some bumps in the road. We have some hurdles ahead that are really going to help define where the First Amendment is going. So we're really at an exciting time right now for the First Amendment.
We were talking a month or so ago, and I was interested to learn this. You can't slander the dead.
Nope. If you're dead, you have no reputation to protect.
So
if you die, if somebody slanders you, then you die. If your state has a survival statute, you can continue to sue, but you can't slander the dead. You can say anything you want about the dead.
So the JonBenet Ramsey case, interesting case because the mother died. But there have been cases won around that case with regard to JonBenet.
Right.
How were they won if JonBenet was dead?
It wasn't sued on behalf of JonBenet. It was on behalf of the parents. They were alive at the time.
Okay.
Or their brother Burke, for example. They, one of the tabloids said that Burke did it. Mm-hmm. He didn't.
Okay.
And he sued, and he won.
And he won. In the realm of kids, let's transition very quickly to schools. There's some schoolyard stuff going on, First Amendment-wise. Update on that.
There's always something going on in the public schools, and let's say we're in the schools, we're going to unfurl a banner on the street, okay? You have one end, I have the other, and the banner says, "Bong hits for Jesus."
Bong hits for Jesus, and just to clarify, if you do not know, it's bong being a method of smoking marijuana.
Right. I'm glad you clarified. I didn't know that, so you helped me out there. You have that banner on the street, but you're not on school property. You're adjacent to school property. During the school day, not at a school activity, although you've been let out to look at this activity. Mm-hmm. The Olympic torch is coming through town. Are you protected as a student? If the school wants to punish you for having that speech, that sign, can they punish you?
And you're not on school property?
Not on school property. You're right adjacent to it on the sidewalk.
Is it during the school day?
It is during the school day.
In loco parentis. The school is acting as a parent. Therefore, the school does have a right to punish you, is my...
Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals says no. But the Supreme Court now has that case, and we'll see what they have to say, or the justices there have to say about that.
What was the school? The school took exception with the Bong Hits for Jesus banner.
Right. They felt that it was a pro-drug message, and they shouldn't be giving a pro-drug message. Now, the court says it's not your message. It's the youngster's message. It's the kid's message. And they also said it was kind of a convoluted message. What does Bong Hits for Jesus really mean? So if there's nothing on the sign itself that's lewd, then the school cannot punish it. Plus, it's off of school property. And there's no disruption going on. There's no disruption to the school day. And the law says, unless there's a substantial and material disruption to the school day and the school operation, then you can't punish the speech. Unless there's two other factors. One is lewd, you have some kind of a curse word on there, something like that. Or it is actually a school-sponsored event. Or a school-sponsored expression, like a school newspaper, high school newspaper.
The kids in school are not over 18. Are they granted, and this would be on school property or off school property, and it's just a question of curiosity. They're under 18. Are they granted the same privilege of freedom of expression as someone over 18?
Not exactly the same, but they do have First Amendment rights. They can be curbed in school in certain situations, like the substantial material disruption or school-sponsored expression like a high school speech.
people throw around, there's, that old saying, well, I know my rights. Actually, I would submit that we don't. No, I think when a lot of people say, I know my rights, they know what they would like their rights to be. Freedom of expression is not an absolute. What's restricted? What can you not do?
Obscenity is restricted. And now that's the problem. What do you think of when you think of obscenity?
George Carlin's 7 dirty words you can't say on television, of which you can now say 5 or 6 of them.
Right, and that's actually profanity, not obscenity.
Ah, okay.
What is obscenity then? That's the question. The obscenity is sexual expression.
Okay.
And that is, if something crosses the line, there is a test for that. If it crosses the line, that can be prohibited. Obscene speech loses First Amendment protection once it crosses the line. The question is, when does it cross the line?
And profanity is part of the approaching the line.
Profanity is actually a broadcast definition for indecency, part of the indecency definition in broadcasting. There's no indecency in print. There's no indecency in public speaking, but in broadcast we have an indecency prohibition.
Okay, so obscenity is not protected.
Not protected.
But it's open for question as to what's obscene and what's not.
Absolutely.
I can't remember the guy from the Reagan administration who said, "I know pornography when I see it."
Well, Meese did.
Edwin Meese, that's it.
And actually, I know it when I see it came from Potter Stewart on the Supreme Court.
Okay.
That was his standard, basically. True threats are also not protected. Now, what's a true threat?
Is that fighting words?
Fighting words, yeah, that's another example of that.
Okay.
That's the type of speech. So incitement to violence, true threats, obscenity, not protected.
The internet is bringing up a whole bevy of interesting potentials. And if you ever participate or try to participate in billboard discussions or blogs, as you were talking, blogging is more reading of somebody else's posting. There was a landlord on a discussion board that I read who was absolutely assailed, scathing attack, named pages after pages after pages. And whose responsibility is this? I mean, you read it and it reads like libel. And here in the television business, if we're in a newscast, it is incumbent upon us, and this is law, not ethics, we must prevent someone from slandering someone else on the air. We can't put a slanderous soundbite into a newscast or a broadcast like this because we are a medium through which the message travels, and we are liable for it. These discussion groups, it's a computer server somewhere, somebody owns it, and yet the most heinous things in the world are being written time and time again. How is that possibly protected, or is it not?
Well, you got to find out who said it. You have to locate the person who said it. But not easy to do.
But the medium is allowing it. If the, let's pick an imaginary newspaper, the Gum Stump Daily Review. Hello, Gum Stump. The Gum Stump Daily Review has a discussion has a discussion board, and it allows all kinds of horrible things to be said. They're liable.
Right. But not on the internet.
Too new?
Too new. Right now, we don't have enough experience with the internet, and courts don't have enough experience with the internet. The legislature doesn't either.
It seems there's plenty of judicial history.
Well, there's plenty of judicial history, but the courts haven't figured out yet just how to apply it in the internet context. And lawmakers try to do it and get struck down by the Supreme Court. So it'll happen, but it's just going to take some time to get the internet up to speed.
We'll go back to the states in just a moment. We do want to remind you that you are watching Pennsylvania Inside Out Issues on WPSU. I'm David Price. Tonight's topic, the First Amendment, and our guest is Dr. Robert Richards from the Pennsylvania Center for the First Amendment. Thank you very much for joining us. There are 3 states. There are a lot of interesting things media-wise right now, electronic media, some pretty violent games out there, some pretty graphic games, and if you have a low threshold of ooh, it can offend it, definitely. And Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Minnesota tried to govern what can appear in video games, and what happened?
All struck down by the courts. Struck down every instance.
Freedom of expression.
First Amendment. What's a video game? What is a video game? It's a speech product, right? Is it any different from a television show that has violence? Any difference from a movie? A book? About the same thing, right? They're all protected by the First Amendment, so therefore video games are protected by the First Amendment too.
Isn't there though, a contingency for creating something that is attractive to a potential victim group? 14 to 18-year-old males in particular would be attracted to these nasty products, and this could be it could have a bad effect on them.
But you got to show that harm. Nobody has shown that harm. Nobody has proven that harm yet, and that's why the courts are striking it down. Now, you think of harm, right? Is there any harm that's been proven by social science evidence? The answer is no. Until you have that, until you prove the harm that playing violent video game and exhibiting violent behavior in society is causally linked, you can't stop it from a lawmaker's perspective.
Where should the
Now, a lot of people think it should be stopped. I think, by the look on your face, I think you do.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so, but since you're from the Center for the First Amendment, somebody's got to poke the bear, you know? I can't sit here and sing Kumbaya with you for 21 minutes. Where do you think the line should be drawn?
Well, I think it should be drawn if they can prove a causal link. That's a smart way of doing it. You're going to say, this is a harmful product, right? It's a harmful product. Show me some harm. We see it with cigarettes, right? There's harmful products in cigarettes. They keep that away from certain age groups because the harm has been proven, medically proven. It's not the case with video games. And then you also have the slippery slope argument. If you do it with video games, what are you going to do to movies? Some of these video games are based on movies. What about books? I read a James Patterson novel. It's pretty violent. Am I going to stop that? Am I going to stop Harry Potter?
Yeah, Georgia just kept it on the shelves.
Right.
Yeah. So it's hard to prove. It's easier to prove smoking causes cancer, emphysema, and all kinds of horrible things than it is to prove watching a series of graphic images messes with your brain.
Right.
Because you're talking about a collection of people, maybe not one person, and one person does not evidence make. So you're not going to get 25% of X number of people who smoke get lung cancer. You're just not going to get that result. But can you not infer that there is a potential better path to take and say, you know what, maybe we don't do that?
Well, let's think about this. What other influences are on a kid's life? You have parents, friends, movies, music, books, hopefully, school, teachers, right? How can you isolate a violent video game and say this is what's causing harm in this child's life? There's just no way to do that. You can't do that logically. So if you can't do that logically, you can't say, well, we're going to take this one product and remove it from this kid's life, because that product has First Amendment protection. And that's what lawmakers are trying to do, left and right. It's happened 9 times across the country, and in all 9 instances struck down on First Amendment grounds. Consistency. And have consistency in the federal courts is, to me, incredible. And if you have a situation where there's consistency in the federal courts, then there's obviously a good reason behind it. And now I know what the federal courts are doing, and I actually think this is pretty interesting. They are awarding attorney's fees to the video game industry. So if you create a law in your state, it gets struck down as unconstitutional, then the courts go back and order the state to pay the video game industry. And in one case in Illinois, it was over $500,000. So you have to think about that from a lawmaker's perspective. Do you really want to waste taxpayer dollars in creating this law, first of all, because you're going to go in and you're going to have to go through all the expense of creating a law. Then it's going to be challenged instantly. Every one of these games is challenged, or laws are challenged, rather. And then you're going to have to go to court, pay for the lawyer to go, your lawyers to go to court, lose the case, and you will lose the case because the mountain of precedent is insurmountable at this point. And then you're going to go back into court and spend more taxpayer dollars because they're going to award attorney's fees to the video game industry.
Thanks to our guest tonight, Dr. Robert Richards from the Pennsylvania Center for the First Amendment. For all of us here at WPSU, I'm David Price. Good night.
A copy of the program you've just seen can be purchased through Penn State Media Sales at mediasales.psu.edu or by calling 800-770-2111.